Joe, can you tell me a little bit about Afri, please?
Well, Afri is a small organisation focused on issues to do with climate change, anti-militarisation, and how they contribute to the refugee crisis, which is one of the major issues confronting humanity today. So we're a small organisation, and I suppose by being small we could be very limited. But we have a number of ways of trying to overcome the limitation of our small size. One, I suppose, is through the use of arts and creativity, and the other is through partnership.
And can you tell me about some of the types of partnerships you've embarked on over the past, I think you've been around 40 years or thereabouts?
Yeah, well, we've had various forms, some more formal and some less formal. The more formal ones would be, for example, with the International Peace Bureau, based in Geneva, and our partnership with them was very formal in the sense that we were members of the board for over a 6-year period and are now on the council of that organisation. And that has a value in the sense that, we share common aims, common objectives, and by being part of an international organisation like that, our message is amplified and brought to a much wider audience. So there is a value in that. But I suppose we would have found the less formal partnerships more effective, really. Partnerships such as, for example, with the East Timor Ireland Solidarity Campaign, which was a single focus campaign, obviously based on the aim of liberation for the people of East Timor. We had a partnership with that organisation which we found to be really effective in the sense that they were a dynamic organisation, very single-minded, very focused, and so they brought that kind of focus to the partnership, and I suppose we brought a kind of a network of support. We brought a kind of an institutional support to them, and I think that was mutually beneficial, and of course the outcome of that campaign was very successful.
And if you look back on all the different partnerships and collaborations, are there any other shining lights that stand out as one that has been a highlight for you?
Yeah, I think the other one that would stand out in particular is the campaign around freedom for Chelsea Manning. And I suppose, again, that was a very informal partnership between Afri and a group of artists in Ireland and the family of Chelsea Manning in Wales. And it was a very loose alliance, but it was an extraordinarily effective combination. And I think that was for a number of reasons. One is there was a very clear focus, there was a very clear aim. But I think more than that was the involvement of artists was very significant, and the approach. So, I often call it, I suppose, musical solidarity or solidarity through the arts. So it was a partnership really based on artistic support for a cause, and I think that's a very powerful method if you can bring that about, the involvement of artists, because it brings colour and entertainment and all these things which are incredibly important to a campaign issue. And I think people respond always to music and theatre in a much more positive way than they do to a harsh political message. So I think for us that was kind of, almost a model of good partnership, a very clear aim, an artistic element, and then a structured approach towards working to the aim of that campaign.
What do you think are some of the barriers to effective partnerships or collaborations when you think back to maybe some of the ones that didn't go well or that don't go well?
I think some of it can be a kind of a fear that the organisations have of losing their own identity, or of having to concede some of their core principles in a partnership. But I don't think that that's necessarily the case. In fact, I think that organisations can be enriched by partnership. The fact that groups do things in a different way shouldn't be seen as a threat, but in fact can be a source of strength and diversity. But there is that barrier of, I suppose fear is one of the barriers. Then there is the need to understand each other, and that takes time to understand different approaches to doing work that might have the same aim. So, but I think barriers may be there, but they're not necessarily a bad thing. They're a challenge, and if we work through those challenges, we can still have a very effective and meaningful partnership.
And when you sit down to embark upon a partnership with another group, organisation, what are some of the important considerations in terms of managing that partnership and preparing for success?
Well, again, I think some of the more effective partnerships that we've had have almost emerged organically, almost without a plan. So that's one way. But I think in terms of planning it, I think the core thing is, what do we want to achieve? You know, why are we doing this partnership? Why are we taking part in this partnership? And I think if there is a common goal, and if people are passionate about achieving that goal, then that's a very strong core around which to work. Then I think, you know, I think we should be very careful not to try and make all the members of the partnership similar or the same, or to try and you know, straitjacket the approach. I think we need to allow groups to bring their own gifts to the table, to do things in the way that they are best able to do it. I think a mistake or a barrier, if you like, is if if there is a kind of an authoritarian dimension to it that says this is how it has to be done. I think the secret is trust, really, and allowing space for people to do things in the way that they are best able.
And just where conflict or tensions might arise, how best to approach those and air them and resolve?
Well, I suppose one thing is not to ignore them, you know, to take them on board. And, you know, I suppose another element is to be prepared to admit where we might have got it wrong. You know, I think often when there's conflict, we see where the other has been wrong, or where we perceived them to have been wrong. But I think if we are prepared to admit that none of us get it 100% right all the time, so we can learn from each other. And often conflicts can be resolved through just allowing people to express what they're feeling and what the issues are for them. And you know, I think if we're able to do this, trust in our own position, I think, is an important dimension.
And finally, just in the era of the likes of Trump and Brexit and a lot of emerging fear and racism, how can civil society and particularly the development sector break out of its own silos and form partnerships with other groups and try to form like-minded coalitions, collaborations? Have you any ideas around that?
Well, I suppose first of all, I think it's extremely important. You know, as you say, we're in a new era. There's new threats. I think the mask of you know, harsh capitalism and militarism has been exposed, so we know what we are facing. There is strength in collaboration, so we need to come together to face and to deal with the threats that are there. And I think, yeah, we have to, you know, again, as I said earlier, fear can be something that holds us back, but I think that we have nothing to lose. We have a strong message, like nobody can deny the importance of aiming to tackle climate change or to end the reign of war that seems to be sweeping over the planet. So we have a common objective, we have a positive message. We should be confident in expressing that message and in stepping outside our own zone and bringing other people on board with this message. I think too often in our sector we just stay within the safety of our own, you know, our own familiar environment. But I think now is the time. The crisis is too serious. The threats are too serious, and we need to step outside that comfort zone to embrace and work with people from all kinds of different perspectives, even if we don't share 100% in our approaches to things or in our values even. But I think we need to find common ground wherever we can do it, and together move forward in the urgent need to tackle climate change, to end war, to address the horror of the refugee crisis, and to work for a better future.